is the last picture with Rahim Khan, and if you haven't already seen The Furious, drop everything you're doing and head straight to the cinema, because this is the best action movie that you will see this year. Um, when, sort of the pre-hype, if you will, was coming out for this movie, again, I'm always very wary of the pre-hype, because it's always like, this is the best movie you'll ever see, the best action film of the decade. You had the stars of the movie, for example, Joe Taslim, who was also in the raid, talking about how the movie is like a watershed moment in action cinema, and much like how the raid changed action films, all the way back in 2010, this movie will do that as well. That's what he said. And I was like, okay, wait, proof is in the pudding, as always. And you know what, man? Nothing that Hollywood has produced, I would say, in the past 10 years. And the reason why we're even comparing it to Hollywood, because of course that is the preeminent film industry, right? The amount of money that they pump into movies, 100, 150 million, 200 million, $300 million. I mean, none of that shit matters. This movie was produced for $20 million. And again, I think that the stars of this movie, the choreographers, Kenji, God, I don't remember his last name, the director, um, uh, Xiao Mo, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the other, what's it called, lead of this, all of them should take a bow, because again, I think since the raid, yes, we've had like some really interesting ones in between, but I think over the past 5 years, let's not go 10 years, over the past like since 2020, this is hands down one of the best action movies I've seen. I mean, this movie, pound for pound, minute for minute, has some of the most inventive, kinetic, blood pumping, sort of making you want to get up and sort of cheer in the cinema kind of action scenes that you kind of hunger for from Hollywood. And despite the fact that Hollywood has had a chance to learn from a film like The Raid, and its many actors, director Gareth Evans, its actors, Joe Taslim, the Mad Dog actor, what is his name? Yayan something, forgetting, Ikuyoes, and all of these guys, and sort of just take them and sort of make a movie. They haven't. Well, to hell with Hollywood. Hollywood doesn't have the balls, it doesn't have the talent to make a movie like this. And good on everyone who put The Furious together. And maybe, I don't know if this is true, but maybe we might even get a Furious 2. Let's hope so. Okay. So, should you watch this in the cinema? Should you stream it, or should you skip it? You can't stream it. You definitely don't want to skip it. Cinema. Watch this in the cinema. It's an experience. And when I said that this is the best action movie that you will watch this year, nothing that Hollywood has even slated for the rest of this year, without like sort of end of June almost, nothing in the next 6 months. I mean, besides like maybe Dune and Avengers Doomsday, but those are something else. None of those are going to sort of quite compare to this film. No. Okay, so the story is set somewhere in Southeast Asia. So it could be Thailand, it could be the Philippines. And you have Joe Taslim's wife, who's a journalist, who's digging into this sex trafficking, sort of child sex trafficking ring. And in this post Epstein world, I'm really glad that that's sort of like, the villains that they've chosen for it, because when it comes to people like that, there is no mercy, right? There is no forgiving. And it brought to mind that one Netflix Korean movie, which I'm forgetting, like the Kickboxing Cop or something like that. I'm forgetting the name, and it sounds like a pretty shitty title, but it's a really good movie. And I'm expecting there to be a part 2. I don't know. Okay. So she's investigating this. Unfortunately, spoiler, she, we don't know what happens to her. Her fate is uncertain. And her husband starts digging in and starts looking into the matter, of course. Meanwhile, we have the mysterious Chinese mute, as they keep on referring to him, who's a handyman by day, father by night, or all 24/7 father, whatever. And he's um trying to sort of make ends meet and trying to take care of his daughter and also sort of impart the wisdom that is Gong Fu. And she gets kidnapped, of course. And that's where you sort of hit the ground running and you go from set piece to set piece to set piece. Now, again, I mean, sort of there's not much to the story in terms of plot. This is meant to be like an action, a vehicle for like sort of endless action, and not mindless either. These scenes are very, very skillfully, inventively choreographed. So, what do we have? We have our first one, which is sort of on a flatbed truck. Really well done. You're amazed at how Xiao Mo, whatever. I'm Xiao. Let's just call him that. How his flip flops bear the burden of him racing through the streets at high speed, and how they haven't ripped. I've always looked down upon flip flops, but maybe I need to revisit that. Really decent action scene. That then leads to almost immediately, because the thing is that again, this movie keeps in mind that people, while there is that sort of underlying plot, they're here for the action, and we go almost immediately to the what's it called, nightclub slash MMA, what's it called, club, whatever you want to call it, set piece. And that, which you guys may have seen even in the trailer as well, is this guy literally taking a hammer to like one henchman after another and almost building this pyramid of goons and just smashing them. Really, really good. The next one we get, and the reason why I'm just going through these is because I'm trying to build up to the finale and also ranking them. I think I'll do that in a second. Then you go from there to what's it called? Another one that you've seen in the trailer, and that's the sort of ice block fight. That is between the two leads, and if I'm getting his name right, Billy Lee, who is this sort of, what is that Korean guy's name? Dongyang or whatever. His picture will come here. He's like sort of that guy, but he's like a force of nature, man. I wouldn't want to take this guy on in a dark alley or any sort of alley. You know, pretty interesting, but despite the fact getting hit in the head with a sledgehammer, he somehow survives. Maybe he's just trying to show that he's tough. And boy, is he tough, because, just the size and mass of him. Okay, whatever, forget that. We then go to another one where I had hoped they were kind to build up to like sort of a staircase almost fight scene, but that doesn't really happen. This is your third set piece. I would have really liked to see, because sort of the camera work kind of implies where you have all of these goons rushing up this narrow staircase, while we got that, if you remember, in the raid, the very famous one. But it would have been really interesting to see that explored more. But they don't really get into that, which I think is perhaps one of the, I'm not saying it's weak, it still has its moments, but I think that sort of in terms of, again, if you sort of hook up an audience member to an EKG and see how excited they get, I think in terms of that one, I was like, okay, I just wanted to see maybe a little more here. This, of course, builds up to what is easily going to make, for me, one of my best scenes of the year when I do a year end. But also, I would say something that takes the finales of both the Raid 1 and Raid 2. If you remember, it is Iko Uwais' character and his brother fighting Mad Dog. And then, of course, in part 2, you have Iko Uwais' character first fighting the Hammer Girl and her brother, the baseball dude. And then he goes and fights that guy with those knives. So this goes and takes that to sort of 100. It goes and puts that scene on steroids, because what happens is you have Joe Taslim and Xiao fighting against Mad Dog's character, who in this case is an archer, but then he's also carrying kukris, and then also one of the main bad guys. One thing before I get into that scene is that I absolutely love the fact, because even though of late, and I've seen a lot of these on like Netflix and stuff like that, in that you have sort of these MMA led action movies in which the lead is either an MMA fighter, or the style, predominant style that they use. Of course, we can't refer to MMA as a martial art. Sorry, but the predominant style that they use is MMA. I'm so glad that in this you stick to traditional martial arts. Of course, Joe Taslim is meant to be sort of a karate guy, and Xiao is meant to be sort of a gung fu. I'm not sure which particular style of it, but that's there. Amazing, because that final fight, it goes on, I would say, for at least 15 to 20 minutes. And the beauty of seeing a two-on-two fight, almost in this sort of balletic sort of interaction of like forces. It's almost like sort of the way you're moving hands, and sort of how they rush in and they fight. It's just so, I mean, my words will not do it justice. That's how good that final fight is. And I mean, you're almost mesmerized, because there's no like sort of trick photography here. And by that, I mean, like, there isn't like sort of break in between. Sure, I mean, they're editing and stuff like that. They're cutting between scenes. But like, it's these guys just like sort of hammering one another and doing it with such aplomb. I've again, I mean, sort of, I look forward to what the rest of the year, promises. But in terms of sort of a martial arts hand to hand fight scene, nothing is going to top the finale of this movie. Yes, I think there's a bit of a stupid scene where towards the end, another spoiler, Xiao and the bad guy kind of crash through a window and land on top of a couple of bikes. And maybe because I don't know, the choreographers kind of ran out of ideas or whatever. They just grab bikes and they start swinging at one another. And I thought that was kind of stupid, considering that we had seen like sort of near perfection in like, the last, like previously. So yeah, I think they kind of should have gotten rid of that part. Um, it's good to see one message though, where there's a scene initially where they're in a hairdresser's, and he kind of tells his daughter that she should get a shorter haircut, and she was like, no, I don't want to look like a tomboy, and I don't like kung fu, and I don't want to keep on practicing it anymore or anything like that. And he's like, I would rather you be able to protect yourself than look pretty. And that is a message that they kind of do, they run with. Whereas sort of everyone and anyone, be they children, 10-year-olds, should learn martial arts and learn to protect themselves. And we do see that sort of gumption in his daughter. Yeah. I mean, if I get the chance, I will definitely watch this movie again, because it is sort of deserving of that. Um, but hands down, the best action movie of the year. That's The Furious.